Just don't F me up.
All right. Welcome to the shit show.
It's such a shit show, dude.
It is the shittiest of shows today for many reasons, but we do have a really good guest, a super special one, because she's my sister.
We have been hyping this special guest since probably even before the first episode. But the first episode, we were like, we have a doctor. We have a doctor. Keep listening because we have a doctor. Please listen more because we have a doctor.
Today is the day.
Today's
Today is the day.
Dr. Butler. What
Dr.
a
Butler.
McKinzy Butler, my sister. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I know there's a lot of pressure. I feel like on the teaser this was mentioned, so like I studied before this. No, I didn't.
I know you didn't.
I'm just kidding. No, I poured my coffee and I just got ready for a fun time this morning.
Fun time.
Do you remember your cup in your coffee maker this time?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. There was a moment, gosh, probably about a week ago, where I was like, milling around my kitchen and I was talking on the phone with my sister, like we do, on the reg. And I had started my coffee and I was emptying the dishwasher and I looked over and I was like, I did not put a cup underneath that. I just like started the Keurig, walked away. And so we were just coffee all over the counter.
We have to edit this out. No one's going to take you seriously now. Shit.
I'm not.
But that did happen.
Full disclosure, she is a human.
Full disclosure, I am a human.
She's super smart, but also sometimes she does some really dumb things. And it's really fun to be like, bro, aren't you a doctor?
Yeah, she'll never let me forget it.
Oh my god.
She'll say something stupid and I'm like, okay, doctor.
Dude, that's what we do to
so
my dad. My dad, he's not a medical doctor, he's a professor doctor. And when he does like stupid shit, we're like, we are going to call the University of Iowa and request that they rescind your doctorate because you acted like a fool.
Yep.
And then when we're really trying to jibe him, we call him a starving artist. Because no one cares about school anymore. This silly guy.
He's just hitting below the belt over there.
He doesn't care.
No one cares about your life's work.
Oh my god. Savage. That's like.
Okay, when you say it like that, that makes me look bad.
I'm just saying facts.
Facts. Should we go to the ER right now, Dr. Butler? Based on what you've been interacting with.
You know what? Let's all go. Let's all go. I think we're all struggling, as we've already discussed this morning. I think we should just go check in.
Check in.
I've seen the memes that are like 72-hour holds looking like a real nice vacation right about now. And no part of me can disagree.
Yeah, preach. Didn't you send me this week recently the list of reasons you could get a lobotomy in the early 1900s? And we were like, we qualify for all of those.
Yes. A low mood, irritability, depression, anxiety. Like if a woman had any of those, you'd qualify. I would have been lobotomized.
Yeah.
I think most people would have.
Yeah. How was everyone not?
Yeah.
I guess that's what we talked about. It's like, because you just hide your symptoms. You don't just like be real. You just pretend you're fine and then you go home.
You just
or you probably had to have family members with money who would be able to pay for such a procedure to save face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
medicine is wild, y'all. Medicine is wild.
So wild. It's rooted. Let's a total disclaimer here. Dr. Butler is not your doctor. Whatever we're talking about is not a diagnosis for you or whomever you are thinking of applying it to. So
This is just general. This is general medical stuff.
Mhm,
Just like we're therapists, but we're not your therapist.
mhm.
She's a doctor, but she's not your doctor. So don't, you know, get a lobotomy because of this conversation and then try to sue her. Because here's
Correct.
the disclaimer: we're not responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
have
also, all the opinions that I'm talking about are my own and not, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know. I
yeah.
don't know
Just
how else to say that. My own opinions.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, but I do want to talk about, I think it's super helpful for, I mean, people who don't have their BFF and sister that they can call, text, and snap 24/7 to
Mhm.
ask questions to. I think it's
Yeah.
really nice to have, like, what would be some general guidelines for, like, this is definitely bring your kid to the ER type of, because I feel like the line gets really fuzzy sometimes. And I think there's a lot of thoughts about fevers and ER visits,
Mhm.
in particular with kids, but how do we know?
Yeah. I think I would start with saying, number one, I'm not a parent, but I always empower parents every single time I see them that parents are there. Their main job is to advocate for their child, right? And a parent or whomever, caregiver, knows their child better than anyone else in the world. And especially kids who are young enough that can't verbalize symptoms. Like in general, if you get to a point where you're legitimately worried about your child, you feel like it's not safe to have them home because of how ill that they are appearing, bring them in every single time, 100% of the time. Don't feel bad. That is your job. And our job in the emergency department is to make sure that there's nothing life threatening going on. And so if you bring a child in and there's nothing life threatening going on, that is really a great thing. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have brought them in just because we're not like, "Oh, get them to the stabilization room. They're so sick," right? Like there's so many things we can do. And it's such a controlled environment. And so just don't hesitate. If your little red flags are going off in your brain that like something's wrong with my child, bring them in. Okay. Because that's our whole job. Um, so I think that would be my first disclaimer. My second thoughts on like things that are true emergencies would be like if anybody is not breathing well at any time, bring them in, right? Um, fever, any documented fever in a child that's less than 60 days old is a true emergency and they need to come in. So 2 months.
Fever, by fever, you mean higher than 100.4?
100.4. Yep.
Okay.
100.4.
They're
Um,
old or less, 100.4, they should go in, no matter what.
no matter what, to an
Okay.
emergency room, not just in urgent care. So 60 days, they need to be emergency room because that's, depending on how the child looks, can be a really big workup and a really big deal. This is
Mhm.
because kids don't have an immune system. Then
Right.
they're just too little. Let's see. Other true emergencies are if a kid swallows a button battery at any time, emergency department right away. I point like I'm in the emergency department. I'm in my home, but
Come to my house right away.
no, don't come to my house. Go to an emergency room immediately. Immediately.
What would happen? What happens
So
if you
what happens with button batteries is they are corrosive. So if they get into the esophagus, corrosion happens, which is very, very dangerous. Yeah. So they have to be removed like immediately.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
My fear with that is, what if they do that and then I don't know?
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the things. Like if you're like, I think he swallowed something, but who has button batteries lying around? First of all, not a
Right.
lot of people, right? Like so it's not something that's super accessible. I think they might be in Apple remotes, what? I still can't say it. Apple remotes for the Apple TV. Or like watches, but you're gonna notice that those things are gone, right? Don't keep them in a drawer
Yeah.
somewhere where your kid can pop them in their mouth.
Yeah.
But
And I guess they probably wouldn't be like I'm like, well, what if it's in a toy? I can't think of a single toy that I've ever changed a button battery in.
Mhm.
no, I think they're pretty much kept out of for that reason, right? Like they're small, they can go in a mouth easily, and they're highly dangerous. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And then, I mean, of course, then there's other things too. Like, I think when a kid falls and hits their head, that can be a huge continuum of they're totally fine versus they're totally not fine. And then
Yeah.
there's the whole in between. So, um, I think, I guess the main guideline I would tell parents for that is if your kid starts, well, first of all, if they are knocked unconscious for more than 5 seconds, then they should be seen. Or if they're vomiting a whole bunch. But the most important thing is if they're like lethargic, not acting like their normal selves, get in.
Go in. Okay.
So you can get a picture of that noggin, see what's going on in their brain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if they fall and hit their heads, those are the things we watch for. What about like dehydration stuff?
Yeah, that's one of those gray areas too, right? So like if they cry and there's tears, that's a good thing, right? Look in their mouth. If they're big droolers, also a good thing. Drooling is a great thing if you're looking for hydration status. In kids who wear diapers, in an ideal situation, like a kid who is not sick, you're looking for like 6-ish wet diapers a day, normally, right? If they're getting down to like 2, that's a little bit more concern. But again, all of these things just by themselves are not that worrisome. It's in combination of, is your child acting normally, right? And even normal when they're sick, because no kid acts like wild when they're ill. Sometimes after you give them a dose of Tylenol and they feel like $1,000,000, they will.
Yeah.
But
Right after they barf all over everything and then their stomach feels a little bit better temporarily, then they're like, I want a snack and I'm gonna play.
yes, yeah. And it's and that part just comes right back down to like you're the parent and you know, like if is your kid normal or not? Are you worried? Because if you are, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if the whoever provider sees them and says, I think it's okay to stay the course at home with Pedialyte and whatever else you're doing, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because right, you'd rather go in and have somebody say they look okay than wait forever at home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the other thing I'll say is too, outside of that 60-day cutoff where I said like less than that's a true emergency.
Yeah.
You do not have to withhold Tylenol or Motrin before you bring your kid in to be seen so that we believe them when they have a fever. Like, give it to them. That's fine. Like if they're not feeling miserable, you don't have to give it to them. And I mean, like, Motrin after 6 months of age, because before that you just want to do Tylenol. But it's okay to give it to them, and we'll believe you. I promise. When you say that they had a fever at home of 102 and they come in at 99, that's a good thing that they feel better.
Yeah.
I
really like the way you said like it's the parent's job to advocate, because I think we've only had 2 ER visits and both times so one time my oldest put a Lego up her nose and all they had to do was like plug a nostril and blow in her mouth and like shot out. You can do that at home. I just didn't know that.
Totally.
They were so sweet, so kind. They thought it was hilarious. They asked if they could keep the Lego.
Amazing.
But my daughter said she wanted it, so I felt really bad. Then the second time, we actually had an emergency, and the doctor was an asshat. He was so mean. And so it's so nice to hear, like, no matter what your experience or what your fears, or if, like, you have, like, shame shit coming up, like, your job is to advocate no matter, like, what, because your kid can't do that for themselves.
Well, and sometimes it comes down to like, we just need to have this checked out. Otherwise, I'm gonna just worry endlessly about it. And like, I mean, sometimes you just have to know that everything is okay. You just have to hear someone say that. Like, no, they're just really sick and they feel like crap, but they're not dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's there's also the distinction right between ERs and urgent cares. And I think in our very incredibly broken medical system, also, it's really difficult to get in and be seen sometimes too. And I can't speak for everybody because I can only speak for myself in that, like, I understand when someone comes in and they're like, listen, I think my child is fine, but they're pulling at their ears and we have a funeral out of town this weekend. So I want somebody to look at them. Is that an emergency, life-threatening situation? Absolutely not. But also, most people try to call in and get into their pediatrician, and because of our medical system, they can't be seen either. So we're doing now a lot of primary care in the emergency department, which is needed, but it also just like there's so many people to be seen all the time. And so wait times and all that it's really hard. It's really challenging. But McKinzy, I'm sorry you had a bad experience with somebody. It's like, I wish I could.
Yeah, I mean, and that it was, I think like in retrospect, I think that it was like very soon after the height of the pandemic. So I think there were a lot of just like burnt out people working, and one of the nurses that was working with us was brand spanking new, like literally I think it was like her second shift, and she had relayed some information incorrectly, so the doctor had come in with that information, and it just turned into like a hubbub of like trying to clarify and whatever, and so it ended up being fine. It was just like yeah, I think the burnout from the physician that was just like upset that we were like coming in for this, and we're like, okay, it was when she had her tonsils and adenoids out, and so we were told like, if you have a fever, go in. And so it was like, yeah, we're just doing what you guys told us.
Right.
But
and I understand too at my job, nobody wants to be there. Like nobody is like, oh, I'm gonna go in and be seen in the emergency department today. Can't wait for that. Like nobody wants to come in and be seen, and nobody wants to stay in the hospital. It sucks. It's like long, everything takes a million years. Yeah. That's hard. But tonsils and adenoids are no big deal. I mean, are a big deal. I mean, they're not a big deal.
Yeah.
Definitely said that
They're
wrong.
no big deal. What are you talking about?
They're no big deal. They're no big deal. No, they can be a huge deal. Oh my gosh. You get a post tonsillectomy bleed. That's a big deal.
Yeah. That's what happened too. We were like, we're not just coming in here because we like doing this. And like, thankfully, one of my friends he lives in California, was visiting. We're like, it's the middle of the night. Can you just make sure Emma doesn't need anything? So we went in, it's like 2:00 in the morning. So we weren't like, we didn't want to wake her up and like whatever, but like just coughing, there's like stuff coming out, whatever. It was like, and she had a fever even after Tylenol, so it was something was amiss.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was gonna have you talk about, I think that probably a lot of people don't know, again, not your doctor, so ask your doctor, but you can do Tylenol and ibuprofen at the same time for kids.
Totally.
Oh,
you can do them. You can for sure do them at the same time. You can, if they're having like a wicked high fever and they're miserable, you can totally give them both. Or you can alternate every 3 hours too, which is good. And then you can, unless somebody has a super high fever, that's usually what I recommend, is every 3 hours while they're awake. Don't wake your child to give them ibuprofen, unless they've been like exceptionally ill, because every 3 you can give a dose of like 3 hours Tylenol, 3 hours ibuprofen, 3 hours Tylenol. Then they're both 6 hours apart, but then you get a really good baseline fever pain control going on in the background, which can be very helpful.
Nice.
Yeah.
What is the most common injury you see in kiddos in the ED?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. I feel like you
Great.
see a lot, as far as injuries, you see a lot of broken wrists, right? Like people
Mm.
fall on an outstretched hand, they break their little bones in here. Another really common one is a nursemaid's elbow, which isn't a broken bone, but it's something that happens really easily. And it's usually a pretty easy fix, which is nice.
But also really painful for the kid.
It's very painful for the kid. So what happens is usually like the classic story is someone's like hanging on to a kid by their hands, like up in the air or swinging them kind of back and forth. And what happens is their radial head, which is the bone in their elbow, just kind of like subluxes out of the ligaments that hold it there. I forget you're so queasy, Miranda. Sorry. So then what they do, they just don't want to move their arm. They just won't move it. And when they're not moving it, it's not real painful. But like even if it's a few hours later, they're not gonna move it because it hurts. And so if people come in with that, usually honestly, we don't even need an x-ray if there's that story, and we can just kind of reduce it. And that's another one that I teach parents how to do it at home so that if it happens again, they can at least try at home before they come in.
You got to teach me.
I teach you. None of your kids have had it.
No, but I want to know. For when?
Okay.
We want to play doctor.
Exactly.
Exactly. How about trampolines? What do you see with trampolines?
You know, so I haven't seen a ton with trampolines, to be honest.
Great.
But I think that's just my sample that I've had. I mean, there's such a balance, right? Like you got to let kids be kids. And I remember having a trampoline when I was younger and I thought it was great. We also just like left the springs open. We didn't even have a pad over them. We didn't have a net. We had nothing. Bare bones.
And it was not dug into the ground. It was not flush with the ground. It was up high with no net, no springs. And we fell off of that thing a lot. We'd fall in between the springs. We'd get our fingers stuck in the springs. Like, and
I don't think we ever.
Our parents were a doctor and a nurse, where we have a super unsafe trampoline, and they were like, "Go to it."
Yeah.
Oh, they'll just fix you in the kitchen.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they would. And you guys do that now.
Yeah. McKinzy took a little spot off my butt cheek a couple weeks ago. Sewed it right up. Cut it out, sewed it up.
We did a little mini surgery at home.
In my bedroom.
It was great because our mom, who's a nurse, previously like a surgical nurse, helped. And she was like drawing up meds. We were like doing stuff. It was great. Great teamwork.
Oh my gosh. What a great
Didn't
Sunday.
we do that before a family gathering? Like before, it must have been a birthday party.
It was before Maxton's birthday party.
Yes.
You're sewing up your bee.
Just the cheek, not the hole.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. No bee-hole issues that we were working on that day.
Just the cheek.
Just the cheek. Do you do a lot of stitches? And okay, for those of us who don't have someone they can just send a picture to and say, does this need stitches? How does one know if it needs stitches or not?
So, great question. Tons of stitches. We do tons of stitches. I feel like kids, it's oftentimes the face where they get in trouble because they got big floppy heads and they fall forward and smack them on something. In general, I would say scalps bleed a ton. And so do faces, actually. They bleed a ton. And it's okay to just like put some pressure on it and wait a little bit. You have up to 24 hours after an injury to get stitches. After 24 hours, you can't do them. But before then, you do. So you have some time to like watch it and see how it looks when it's not bleeding like crazy. If a wound is really kind of like gaping open, I'd probably go in. And even if it's just glued, it'll be shut, and then stop making that face for it.
Gaping open.
Gaping open.
Ugh.
And then of course, I'm a face. If it was my kid, I'd probably want to have stitches just for scarring purposes,
Oh yeah.
right? Because your face, you can't hide it. Especially if it like crosses the border of a lip or an eyebrow, you want to go in and have those fixed because those are really obvious if they don't heal correctly.
Oh wow.
Little like on the gums, like or not on the gums, inside of the lips, like the mucosal surfaces, those heal super quick. So unless there's something like big, really bleedy, those almost always heal on their own.
Okay.
So.
And that you wouldn't, I mean, obviously you couldn't do like glue or anything on. So it's like, unless it's huge.
Unless it's huge or they like bite through their lip inside to outside, which happens.
What?
Yeah, usually it heals on their own. Also, if kids have baby teeth and they knock them loose, that's okay. Nobody's going to try to save the baby tooth. If it's a big tooth, yes. Loose, different if it falls out completely, put it in a thing of milk and go in and be seen. I would call your dentist first, but if you can't see a dentist, go to the emergency department.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
don't put it in anything else. Put it in milk.
Milk.
That's so interesting. Okay. Now
How come you can't get stitches after 24 hours?
Just because it's already started the process of healing. So if you put them back together, they already have kind of not like scabs, but they're already healing on each edge, so they're not going to heal together, you know?
Oh. Wow. Did not know that.
So interesting.
Yeah. I'm processing too much information to be able to output a question.
No, that's okay.
There's always so many things that come up with like, does this need to be seen? Does this not? So I think it's helpful to just have someone be like, if you're questioning it, do it and go from there. But
yeah,
such a pain in the butt always.
It is. It's a big pain in the butt. And I think I know it's hard to say when you have a kid who's sick and miserable and you're like, we have to go be seen. But especially if it's something like one of those gray areas where you're like, oh, I want somebody to look in this kid's ears. I think there's something going on. I sounded really Minnesotan when I said that.
Something going on.
Something going on. Just to have some grace with our medical system that we all recognize is very broken, because I would say all the providers that I know are doing the very best that they can, and you might catch somebody at a crappy moment or at a bad day, but it's a lot harder when you're like, I know you've been waiting for 2 hours. I'm here to see you now. It just, to have grace with each other in that moment, I think it makes the whole thing a lot more palatable. I don't know. It's really hard though. I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's miserable for you guys too. Like, it doesn't feel good to be working and be like, yeah, well, there's like 42 people waiting to be seen still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that there's nothing like you guys are doing purposefully. We were in the ER not that long ago, and it was like a 4-hour wait, and this guy said he had been there much longer. I couldn't see what his injury or problem was, and there were literally people who were like laying down, vomiting into bags, and he was like, I've been here forever, and why aren't I the first one? And the person behind the desk very gently was like, this isn't a first come, first serve situation. This is whose life needs to be saved, basically. So, you could go to an urgent care facility. There's one across the street. And then he just needed to be mad, I think. It's been such a long time. And somebody behind me was like, that is like a great example of like our healthcare system doesn't have the time, money, and resources. It's not the providers like issues. And she was kind of like mumbling it to her partner, but I was like, preach, because everybody who's like Medicare for all makes us wait forever. You're waiting forever now and you're still paying for Medicare. So let's cut out these hold on. This is not what we're talking about. Sorry.
I would say, as far as the triage system, right? Like, you don't want to be the person in the ER who's being rushed back immediately. You don't want to be that person, because that person is very sick, literal life threatening. You don't want to be that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the piece that's important to remember is like you're saying, when you go to the emergency room, sometimes it's a true emergency and sometimes it's like, this needs to be seen and I don't have another option and whatever.
Right.
And some people are there and they die. Like, people go to the ER and they do die. So like, it's not just like you guys are back there farting around and just not wanting to see people. It's like, dude, we're literally, there's death happening. Like, and then I could walk into the room and now I need to like look in your throat because it's been sore for a month.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough where you walk out of one room where you've had somebody critically, like seriously critically ill, and then you walk into the next room and you're like, okay, let me go grab you a warm blanket. I'm going to look in your throat. We'll give you some Tylenol. We're going to do the things. And it's a challenge. We say even keel, but part of it.
I think too, you said this before and I thought of it and then we just got sidetracked, but your job in the ER is to make sure that people aren't dying. It is not to do like the full workup and like give somebody a comprehensive diagnosis, right? Like, so going in with that expectation, even if it's for your kid, like, oh, we're gonna go in and be seen. They've been having these symptoms for a long time and they've been doing this and they've been doing that. Okay, well, they might go there and do some of the things and leave with Tylenol and no diagnosis and you saying go back to your whatever, and people get so pissed about that, which I understand, but also that's not what the ER is.
Yeah, I say it, I feel like many times a day, that like, just because I don't have a diagnosis of this is why you're having your symptoms doesn't make the symptoms any less disruptive to your life, right? Your symptoms are real. They're just not something that you have to come into the hospital for us to look at more, which is a good thing. And oftentimes things need more investigation. It can just happen on an outpatient basis. And I realize that that's challenging, again, with our fragmented medical system, where you're going to wait a little bit to see your primary, and then you're probably going to wait a little bit more to see your specialist if you need one. And it's not an ideal system, but it is the system in which we kind of have to navigate. And it's hard though. I know people come in and they want to know what's going on, and it's frustrating when I can't give them an answer. But I remind people that it's a really good thing. Like, it's a really good thing if all your labs look good and normal. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I would imagine like parental anxiety can get projected on you of like, we didn't get an answer and I don't know what's wrong. I hear that actually when I used to work with teens, I would hear that a lot from parents when kids were going in for some sort of like self-harm. So they weren't like, that it was like a passive suicidal ideation. It wasn't like a act, like I have a plan or anything. And so the ER is like, you know, there's no injury to take care of, and you're not telling me that you are actively suicidal. So I'll give you some referrals. I'll contact your provider, but like, there's nothing else that can be done in the ED for that.
Yeah.
And I think people do kind of feel like dismissed then, and they're like, well, it's not that bad, but like my kid is telling me all this stuff. Is like, that's super scary. There's not a therapist in the ER. There's social workers, but like you're not going to have a therapy session in the emergency room that's going to like magically fix your kid.
There's not
mental
even a therapist that's going to magically.
Right. Mental health in the emergency department, I feel like, it's a whole other I mean, I feel like we could probably talk about it for hours. It's like a whole wild system, and especially the pediatric mental health too, right? Like that's talk about a system that is overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
It is the pediatric mental health
Mm-hmm.
system as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you're saying, Mackenzie, like parents are scared because their kid is doing this scary behavior. Like, oh my God, I just
Absolutely.
found out that my kid is like cutting up their legs
Mm-hmm.
when I'm, not around, whatever. And that's really scary. And there's not really anything unless they need stitches that they can
Yeah.
do at the emergency room. And like we get it too when people, I don't see kids anymore either, but like teenagers, parents would bring them and they're so like activated, like they've been using self-harm. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
like we'll work on that. There's not an immediate solve for this. Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's hard.
I've had people ask me like if my child is expressing suicidal ideation or thoughts of self-harm, should we go to the emergency department? And like when we're working as therapists, we're in a kind of a tricky position where it's like, well, if you're telling me you have these symptoms and it's like 9 o'clock at night and you're not committing to a safety plan, I have to tell you to go in.
Hmm.
Like that is what my board tells me to do.
Hmm.
And then they'll get miffed because they went to the ER and they were like, well, there's nothing we can do. And it's like, well, my therapist, it's like, we can't communicate with the emergency department. Like, we can't call ahead for you. We can't, like, so there, I mean, we're kind of in a stuck place because there isn't a middle ground, especially for kiddos, where it's like the urgency room or urgent care for mental health. That would be so cool.
That would
Like,
be cool.
it's not a thing.
It's not. There's just no, yeah, there's so much missing. Like you can go to the ER, they'll keep you there for hours, maybe give you some thing to reduce your anxiety, give
Mhm.
you some referrals and send you home. But then you wait for your individual therapy appointment, which could be weeks away especially if it's new. So then there's nothing for the in between stuff. And it just makes it so like people have to wait until their symptoms increase to the point of being very serious, like they need inpatient hospitalization.
Mhm.
So it's super fun.
Super fun. It's also, I mean, listen, Miranda and I are so anxious about parenting. We started a podcast. So, like, we get it. This shit is scary.
Hmm.
So, like, yeah. I really appreciate the way that you said, like, your job is to advocate for your kids. And, like, you go to the ER and they send you home. Great.
Hmm. I mean, it might cost
Yeah,
$1,000, but it's great that your kid gets to go. They're not, needing life sustaining care in the ER.
Yeah. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Kins? I cut you off.
well, I was just going to say that goes for mental health too. I know it's a gray area and it can be really challenging, but to have if you're worried and potentially your therapist is worried, right? To sometimes an independent evaluation where you don't have that call ahead can be a good thing because then you get someone who comes in with a really fresh mindset. And gosh, we are so lucky to have the amazing mental health and social work team in the emergency department. They're angels because they spend a lot of time talking to patients and families and all of that to come up with a plan and follow up. And yeah, if you can discharge, that's great, right?
Mhm.
Because keeping people in the hospital for any reason is not fun. Keeping people in the hospital for their mental health is not fun, especially if they don't want to be there. You have to
Mhm.
hold them there, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That would be an interesting episode to talk about the reality of like what happens when you are hospitalized for mental health. Like no
Hmm.
phone,
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
none of your comfort stuff. Like it's not unenjoyable.
The
spa like.
reports that I get from clients who've done those experiences is that it is unfun.
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 The whole part of it, every single thing of it is not fun.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. It's not supposed to be. I think that's where like people maybe get confused. And I don't know
Mhm.
where we get maybe from like movies or TV shows or something where like you meet your BFF in the hospital and you guys end
Mhm.
up being together forever and you write a famous book and you're millionaires. Maybe you meet people in the hospital.
Well, and I think too the commercials about oh, this mental health and rehab center in California
Yeah.
where there's palm trees and pools and this and that, and you go and you sit in this circle and you do this wonderful, really intense group therapy and you blah blah blah, and it's like that is literally only for millionaires.
Yeah.
So if you're a millionaire, I think that's the route you should absolutely go. Take me with you, please.
Yeah.
And if not, then we do what the normals do, and we go to the ER and we go to a hospital inpatient mental health unit, which doesn't look like that. You wear hospital socks and a gown and
Hmm. People
Mhm.
are checking on you all the live long day.
mm-hmm.
No social media,
Mm-mm.
no texting,
Puzzles.
sometimes no visitors.
Uncomfy beds. I feel like that would be
Getting awakened with the
Yeah.
staff checks and stuff. It's
oh my God. Yeah.
Mhm.
unfun.
Nobody sleeps in the hospital. I feel like in any part of the hospital, mental health or otherwise, like you are not sleeping.
Mhm.
Have you guys seen the meme or the videos of the guy impersonating the labor and delivery nurse after
Oh
he had
my
a
God.
Yeah.
Yes.
kills me every time. Walks in, drops the clipboard, the lights come on. Hey, doing his hands.
Mhm.
Every time kills me.
So good.
I do remember when I was a med student and I had to go in because we would have to pre-round before rounds to like get prepared, and you have to go in at like so early in the morning and be like, "Hi, good morning." You're like waking people, and then every once in a while you get someone who's sleeping soundly, and then they're like,
Yeah.
"You're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's okay."
Like the way mom used
So
to
jarring for everyone.
The way mom used
Ah.
to freaking wake up in the middle of the night when she would have us wake her. Oh, you have to be home for your 12 o'clock curfew. Come wake me up. And she would respond like it was a murderer.
Every time.
Like every time. Like the most. And I'm like, it's literally just me. You knew I was going to come and wake you up. The same damn time every night. Okay, any final thoughts for people?
Oh gosh.
You're really on the spot now. You better come up with something good.
It better be
I
golden.
I don't know. I feel like I've said all the things I typically do that if you're worried, come in. Come
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
And if you know it's not oh my gosh, they're not breathing well, if you don't feel like it's an emergency this second, and sometimes it's not, it's also okay to try some things at home and to give some Tylenol and Motrin and I don't know, some prune juice if your kid's constipated, whatever. But if things change, oh, I do tell people this every day too. Our bodies are changing every single second of the day, right? And so even if you're in the emergency department or you're at home and things are okay, and then all of a sudden something changes and you're no longer okay, come back or come in.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you've had a normal workup 2 days ago, but now if you have severe pain or big
Mm-hmm.
type fevers or you're vomiting all over the place and it doesn't go away, come back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a good reminder too, that
Yeah.
you can come back to as a frequent flyer of the ED with my disabled husband, they are happy you came in because you never know what is going on in your
Mm,
business.
Mhm.
And it might be something that isn't progressed enough the first time you go in, and the second time you go in is like, oh, it is so clearly this thing. We can take care of it.
there she is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
We got it now.
Yeah. And oftentimes when you're discharged from the emergency department, we give, okay, here are reasons to come back. And we mean it. Like, if these things happen, come back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, if people have more questions, send them in, and I bet I could rope Dr. B into coming back again.
Dr. B. I can be your hero, baby.
Oh, there it is.
That's the song. If you were a baseball player at bat, that would be your song as you enter the room of your patient.
That would be my song.
Oh, for sure. I can kiss away the pain. Oh yeah.
I love that. I love that you're getting that vibe from me. I love it. Amazing. We should have
Amazing.
that.
Amazing.
What if I carried a little Bluetooth speaker with me into the room and I played it? Can you imagine?
Yeah, you would be TikTok famous for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. You walk in, you say, I could be a huckleberry, and then you do your business.
Then I do medicine.
Then I do medicine.
Medicine. Are you better? Sure are.
Mm-hmm.
Sure
I see.
are.
I don't.
Magic Man and El Diablo. Now you see me?
I knew you would get it. I knew you would fucking get it.
I know. Shake and bake, baby.
Ricky Bobby action.
You guys are Ricky Bobby
Basically.
with a Minnesotan accent.
I just love muscle control is all. Oh my God, a tangent. Okay. All right.
We were due.
Again, the social medias. McKinzy, social media. Help me.
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Hey. Hey.
Like
Check us
us,
out.
rate us.
Share
Do the thing.
it with your friends. Let's make a goal. Everybody share it with 5 friends.
Mhm.
And if your friends get mad at you, it's your problem.
Everybody share it with 5 friends. And then if you do, we will change nothing and we'll just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, you literally get nothing out of it.
Yeah, perfect.
Except
Seems like a
feeling
good
good for helping others.
We are doing great today.
So good.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Dr. B.
Dr. B.
Text you
Thanks for
soon.
having me. Good to be here.
All right. Love you, fools.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.